The place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, November 6th, 2023, not 22. And this is episode 811 of Living Free in Tennessee. And I have a confession to make. I recorded this Saturday before I left for Jack Spirko's fall workshop. And I did it just audio only with the idea I was going to live replay the whole thing after, just on Monday, my normal time last week. And then I went to do that and I noticed that there was no sound. And what had happened is I had not hit my unmute button on my mic. And so I recorded 45 minutes of me moving around and making gestures and silence. So I was like, well, at least I have my podcast notes for Monday, November 6th. So today we have an update on my word of the year, and the word was breakthrough. And I've done one update already. There's some late breaking lessons on this one. And I think it's funny because before Jack's, I thought I was going to keep the word breakthrough into 2024 as my word of the year. And now I have a new word brewing because I think this new word will help me with the end result I want for breakthrough. So that's interesting because it's actually kind of good that the audio failed on the other recording, because now my conclusion is totally different on this episode than it would have been just a week ago. That is how life moves us along. I'm going to remind you, if you're in the live feed and want to get a question in or a comment for me to see, please just put question in all caps, : and then write your question so I know to mark it. If not, I may not necessarily see it. And, I know some of you like to comment from time to time. I'm also going to cover the usual Monday segments today, Tales from the Prepper Pantry, all of that. That'll happen soon. Before we do that, I do want to thank our two sponsors of today's show. The first one is DiscountMylarBags.com. DiscountMylarBags.com has been supporting Hollow Roast Coffee for almost the whole time since I got serious about roasting and selling coffee. And it started just with Toby, the owner, reaching out and saying, hey, how much do you pay for your bags? I think I can beat that. And it's because his specialization is sourcing things in bulk and then passing on the savings to his customers. If you are in the market for food storage solutions, head over to DiscountMylarBags.com. And if you're not sure yet what you want to do, you can go over there. On the right-hand bar are resources that you can read about how to store food properly. He's put together a really nice educational area of his website for you so that you know how to size your bags, how to size your O2 absorbers. All of those things are over at Discount Mylar Bags. Our second sponsor of today's show is Carrie Brown from Strong Roots Resources. Carrie Brown is a great supporter of the Living Free in Tennessee podcast and our network. He has been traveling from homestead to homestead, one person at a time, giving consults on how people may want to organize their homesteads. And as a result, we've seen a lot of forward momentum. But something Carrie does that's really cool at Strong Roots Resources is he's really developed a reputation and a specialty for identifying wild, edible, and herbal plants that are all around us. So he'll come out, walk your property, find the plants. You can walk with him. That's no problem. He'll tell you as he goes. Then he geolocates them on his phone, gives you a map so you can go back and find that wild blueberry or that patch of sassafras or anything else you might have on your own property growing itself already. And here's the thing about wild edibles, guys. That's work you don't have to do to grow your food. That's why I love foraging, and it's an integral part of our lifestyle here at the Holler Homestead. Anyway, go over to strongrootsresources.com to find out more. With that, it's time for our first segment, which is this week's live stream schedule. Now, if you're on the Monday mail, you did not get a Monday mail. You did not get a Monday mail because I flew home yesterday and I was very tired. You probably can hear my voice is a little still hashy right now from all of the change in humidity, and maybe I sang a little karaoke over the last 4 days. And, usually singing doesn't do this to my voice, but I think maybe I might have screamed some on some of those songs. Who knows? But That means that I did not get Letty what she needs to send the Monday mail. I just sent it to her before going live with this. So you'll be getting a Tuesday mail this week. If you're not on the Monday mail, it's a weekly mail that just talks about what's going on in the network, shares some network events. I have a recipe of the week in there. We have a homesteading tip, and we also cover the live stream schedule as well as past episodes of the podcast that went out last week in case you missed them. If you want to sign up for that, go over to livingfreeintennessee.com and just sign up for the newsletter. You'll get your weekly mail. It used to be a notice of every podcast that I did. Just boom, here's the podcast. But this year I sent out a survey to everybody who was already on the email list and said, hey, what do you want? And y'all told me what you wanted. So I did sort of an amalgam of all of the things that were requested. Anyway, our live stream schedule this week. I'm live right now. We didn't put that in the mail because you're going to miss it because the mail's out tomorrow. But 9:30 tomorrow, I am live with Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast and John Willis from Special Operations Equipment. We're going to talk about whatever we want to or whatever you ask us. I think it's going to be a pretty good talk. I have a couple questions queued up for them if we don't get anything from the audience out of the shoot. So that should be a pretty fun discussion. That'll be on my YouTube channel as well as my Odyssey channel. That's just at LFTN on YouTube and then Living Free in Tennessee on Odyssey. It'll also be at Special Operations Equipment and the Survival Podcast. So we blast it out everywhere. It's what we do. Wednesday at 2 p.m., I will be live with Sue Zoldak. And we're going to talk about some changes I'm making in my branding strategy and why you want to be purposeful with your brand. We're just going to talk about all of those things. William's asking if it's 9:30 Eastern. These are all in Central Time. So it'll be 9:30 Central Time that I'm live with Jack Spirko, 2 p.m. Central Time that I'm live on Wednesday with Sue Zoldak. And then Friday, because daylight savings time has gone away, our 10:30 homesteading happenings show is moved back to 9:30 because we've renamed the hour again. And I just keep that one at the same actual hour, like the sun hour. So that'll be 9:30 a.m. Friday. We'll do Homestead Happenings update. We're covering a couple of weeks. The Redneck has some stories like saved up for you about stuff that happened while I was out of town. I was basically out of town more in the last 6 weeks than I was in town. And I am actually looking forward to being home until Christmas. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. My heart is happy. Anyway, our next segment is Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. The pantry is still providing really well for me. Even though I was not here very much in the last 6 weeks, I've been able to tap into the pantry for my food as I travel. And the lesson there for me has been make sure I stock some easy to travel foods. Like I'm completely out of nuts except for like 2 cups of pecans that I got from one of our community members, Kurt Duggar, 2 years ago that I've just been sort of cycling through out of the freezer. He just texted me and said he has this year's crops coming on. So I'm going to get more for next year, once I finish these. So that kind of was like down to the wire. And then the replenishment came. I have not done my usual reboot in the fall that I do. So we are going to run out of some things. And part of why I'm kind of playing this one on the edge for paper goods and that sort of thing is that we are in the middle of a large remodel, which I'll talk about as I update later about the word breakthrough. So I'm making an actual intentional decision not to resupply so that there's less stuff here, because what's happening with my home is that we needed to replace the joists in 2/3 of my house. And in order to do that, things have to be taken out of the house and they have to go somewhere. And so if there are fewer things, then you have more places to put what you do have. The last of the green tomatoes got harvested right before I went to Jack Spirko's. First frost came in, knocked out my vines. And I found one more tomato hanging at the bottom that didn't get knocked out by the frost because it wasn't frozen for long enough. The little cherry tomatoes, when they went through the frost, they got soft, but I had a nice big 140-year heart-shaped pink tomato that is, we call it 140-year Timmy. I'm actually going to reach out to his family and find out where they got the seeds, because when I got the seed from him, he said his family got it from a farmer that had been saving it for over 100 years. And so we named it the 140-year Timmy. Just some of us locally here that keep this seed and keep it going. Timmy has since passed away, but I'm sure that his family, if they're still farming, they're still using these seeds because they've been using them for many years. One of the best tomatoes, like best tasting tomatoes that I grow, is this tomato. So I was super happy to see that one hanging there. And 2 days from now, it will be ideal for eating. So we're going to have that probably with a salad is what I think. What I do, though, when I harvest green tomatoes off the vine, I don't go out and go crazy and make like green tomato relish or fried green tomatoes. I put them on my countertop and they still ripen for another 4 weeks or so. So they'll slowly ripen on their own cycle, and then I use them as they get ripe. Or if I have too many at one time, I cut them up and throw them in the freezer with my other tomatoes that I threw in the freezer. And once the process is done, I look at what I have left, and I either make salsa, or I can them, or I make a sauce, a nice spaghetti sauce dinner, or something of that nature. I didn't make ketchup this year. I could make ketchup with what I have just because I don't use very much ketchup, and homemade ketchup is far superior to anything you can get in the store. So I'll do something like that. And then if 4 weeks from now, there are still some green tomatoes around, then that is the time that I do fried green tomatoes or whatever, because they're probably not going to ripen after about 4 weeks. And then that will be the end of tomato season until next year, probably around late June, early July, when I get my tomatoes booted back up and they start being ripe tomatoes. So it's with a little sadness that I harvested the last tomato yesterday. Oh no, today when I saw it. It was today. It feels like yesterday. Today feels really long to me. It's probably because I'm still tired from Jack's. Right before I left, I was only home for 1 day. And some TSP community member, not TSP, some LFTN community members happened to be driving through town. They came over. The Holler neighbors came over. Because of my stepfather being so ill, I was in California rather than being home. So I was only home for a day. I needed to pack and get some stuff ready to go out of town. They came over and ripped out my whole living room, so that when Ken came in on Tuesday to start rebuilding everything, he didn't have to do any demolition. This saved me a ton of time. So I want to thank everybody who came out and helped with that. Ken got things. This is what Ken accomplished in just 3 days. New joists, new subfloor. He framed in my new bathroom wall for the mudroom. He put in a pocket door, and he moved my chimney in 3 days of work. And that was possible because the demolition was done, and then Tactical was like keeping up on what he could. So Tactical put in all the insulation in the floor while Ken wasn't there, and then Ken came back and could do it. So that was a huge boost for me, and I felt really guilty while I was in here recording a podcast that turned out I couldn't use later because I forgot to unmute my mic. But I don't know how to say how thankful I am. There's been so much going on in my personal life that just keeping up with the basics has been pretty darn hard. And part of that's the emotional toll, but part of it is the travel toll of adding travel in a time that was already pretty busy. What I managed to do that day, though, because I knew that we were going into this week of busy construction. You're probably wondering, how does this relate to the pantry? I'm getting there, guys. I'm getting there. I pulled out ground beef, asked Tactical if he had sausage, and I made like a 10-pound meatloaf for him, which he ate all of while I was gone. And that was because I know that he loves meatloaf. What he doesn't know is I made a secret second meatloaf. That's what we're having this week. Tonight we're having steaks because Eric Myers, this is great. The whole community has been busting hump to help me for weeks. I had a half cow I needed to pick up today. It's 3 hours there and 3 hours back. And Eric Myers, who is one of our community members, is driving right by where that cow is, and he's picking it up for me, saving me 6 hours of driving. I actually just texted with him because he's running a little behind. And I was like, do you want me to meet you? Because, I could meet you if you don't want to come all the way here from there. Because he doesn't have to end up in the Holler. He needs to end up somewhere else. and then he'd be here and go back. Anyway, he said he's still coming here. We'll see if he changes his mind. I'm perfectly happy to go drive, meet him where he's going, which is about an hour to here from here. And it's only 2 hours of driving instead of 6 for me. So that would be awesome. But yeah, we're feeding him steak tonight when he gets here as a thank you for picking up the cow. I did get my nutraceuticals restocked for the winter. So I have been looking at like first aid and medical, because this is the time of year. I do it twice a year, spring and now in the fall. I look and I'm like, do I need more Band-Aids? Do I need more gauze? If somebody gets really sick in the middle of the winter and we're iced in, do we have everything we need? So I've done all of that. I got everything ordered from the airport, and I actually just found the box of the things that I ordered in my roasting shack. So somebody got the mail and put it in my roasting shack instead of my house. Probably a wise move considering how beat up my house is right now from the remodel. But that's all done. So I've done that resupply. I've just been really careful about not like buying the big thing of paper towels. The cube of paper towels takes up a lot of room. So, and if I run out of paper towels, I don't care, because I can just use rags. Paper towels are super convenient when like a dog vomits or something, but they're not really something I need to use. Like I can use rags and I can bleach them in a bucket or whatever, and then we're good to go. Anyway, that's how the pantry's going. It is well stocked from the gardens this year. I just tapped into my first jar of home canned green beans last night. I came home and from the airport, I asked Tactical if he had dinner plans, and he sounded pretty stressed. He said no. And I said, well, I have a pre-spiced set of pork chops in the upright white freezer. If you want to pull those out and throw them in the sous vide at 165, those will be ready to go. And I'll just do side dishes when I get home and see what we have. And I decided to do the easy button, which is to make like really buttery, garlicky, chickeny green beans from the jar. And they were great. So I don't regret that it was a great green bean year, because we have so many jars of those put up. I think we'll actually make it all the way until the next green beans come off the garden next year, but we'll see. I'm kind of excited from the Survival Podcast Fall Workshop. Just like some of the growing things I learned there are, well, it's techniques I've never tried before. So I think I'm going to implement some of those. I'm going to be thinking really hard over the winter. I'm going to do a whole show on that too, because, it's not what I should be blathering on about here in the update on the word breakthrough episode. But yeah, we'll be doing some debriefs. I still need to debrief Self-Reliance Festival for y'all too. So like, as busy as I was this fall with all the events, I got a lot out of them, just personally. And I want to share some of those lessons as we go into Christmas season. Next up, we have the weekly shopping report from Joe. We made our trip on Saturday as usual. The first stop, also as usual, was the Dollar Tree. Stock looks good from the shelves to the coolers for both food and drinks. The store was busy enough for one woman working a register to holler all to the front. Our second stop was Hobby Lobby, where we added some stencils for crafting. She found the ones she wanted in the baking area, and those are usually a lot cheaper than the ones in the paper craft aisle. So that's also a frugality tip, guys. We skipped Home Depot, but online 2x4x8s are unchanged at $3.48, and Aldi was last. The produce looked terrible. Most of the bananas were green. Cantaloupes looked old and wrinkled, and a few bags of grapes just didn't look very good. So I got dates instead. The chocolate section continues to diminish, but an alternate I like was available. Staple prices are as follows. Eggs were $1.11 a dozen. Milk, $3.02 a gallon. Heavy cream, $4.69, and that's for a quart. $3.19 for a pound of butter, $3.29 for a pound of bacon, $3.99 for 10 pounds of potatoes, $5.59 for, I don't know what size bag that is. I think it's a 5-pound bag of flour. $2.19 for a 5-pound bag of flour, and $3.09 for sugar. A gallon of untainted regular, which means ethanol free, is $3.89.9. So that's how things are looking for the shopping report. Next up, we have a frugality tip from Margot. Margot says this: traveling can end up costing a lot of money. With the choice of hotels over Airbnb, hotels sometimes look like a much better deal, But when you get a house that has a kitchen and don't eat out, a trip to a local farm stand or grocery store to buy food will usually save you money over eating out. And you know what you're eating. So when you just weigh in your meal costs when you're choosing Airbnb or a place with a kitchen over a hotel room with no kitchen. That's a pretty good tip. That's actually why I often pay more for an Airbnb when I'm traveling, just because I also bring my food, cook my food, and I don't spend, $50, $100, $150 on a meal out twice a day or whatever. And you might be like head exploding on the $150. Well, if there's more than one person with you and you don't want to eat crap, I mean, even fast food is, you're getting up over $20 a meal, and you can do way better than that. Like, I was eating in Camden from the grocery store. I was eating a $10 steak. Like, it cost me $10 for that steak, but it was a good steak. And pairing it with a couple dollars in vegetables at night, so $12, still better than a $20 or $16 fast food meal, and way healthier. And then if I would have gotten that in an actual restaurant, we would be looking at $40 to $50 for that meal. So that is a great tip from Margot. With that, it is time for the main topic of today's show, which is Breakthrough, a Word of the Year update. I'm going to start out here. A lot of you already know what the Word of the Year is, and you can write your own definitions in the comments if you want to, or your own thoughts on this. But we have a lot of new listeners, and the Word of the Year is something that stems from our community member, Jenny Hill. And when she and I met, she was in a very different mindset and a different place in her life. And if you've listened to the show we recorded 2 weeks ago, we talked about that a little bit. But one of the tools she decided to use to take ownership and control and change her future was to choose a word to focus on every year. And before the end of the year, she journaled on what changes she wanted to make, what word resonated with her, found a word, researched the word, and then continued to journal through that first year on with her word of the year. And she didn't tell anybody about this. At the same time, I was talking to podcast folks about how to set your life strategic plan, how to set up areas of focus, how to start executing and moving towards where you want to be rather than letting the world tell you where to go. Because if you do not choose your path, other people and society in the world chooses your path for you, and you may end up somewhere where you're completely miserable, living the way you quote unquote should, but you don't like living this way. So a much better approach is to spend time, invest time thinking about what you really want, what you would and your family want together, how you want your life to look, and really write that down so that when opportunities come up that move you closer to that, you can take them. And when the opportunities come up that take you further away from that, then you can not do those, because there are trade-offs. You need to filter out the things that are not bringing you where you need to be. And that doesn't mean that you won't ever do something you don't like. You totally will. But with that filter, you can move a lot more quickly towards your life goal. And here's the thing about life goals is they may adjust over time. I know in my 20s, when I did this process, I had what I wanted in 5 years. And then I realized I didn't want it. And so I had to do it again. And it was fine. It wasn't just like, burn everything up and go. It was, oh, I see. I got that. I've learned a lot from this time. I'm ready to change some of these things. One of the things was traveling all the time. And yet here I am, having traveled all the time for 6 weeks. Beth, I'm glad to be back. Beth Emily, I'm glad to be back too. Somebody in the comments said, glad you're back. Yeah, I get to be home for 6 weeks. It's great. So when Jenny started talking about the word of the year, and I was hitting on my 3 things, which is the planning method I just defined for you, and starting with your life strategic plan, I realized her word of the year and my 3 things pair really well together. And I started doing a word of the year too. And in 2020, I chose my first word, and the word was grow. And here's the thing about the word of the year is there's lessons in the word of the year. And usually you get the opposite of the word to learn the word. So what happened to me first was that I spent a lot of time not growing. And 2020 was the year that we got just decimated by tornadoes in Tennessee, and that caused problems. We had the shutdowns from the thing and all of what followed that. And there was a point in 2020 where I was just like, you know what, I'm going to give my listeners, I'm going to give them knowledge on how to do all of these things from scratch that you don't know how to do from scratch, so that if you can't get cheese at the store, you can make cheese. If you don't know how, if you can't get yeast, you can catch yeast from the air and make sourdough. Like literally, you can do that. And we did, like in April, April of 2020, we did a bunch of webinars, but it wasn't making me any money, right? And part of growing is not just growing my food and growing the network, but growing the income so that I'm more stable. And the LFTN Spring Workshop, which is always the last weekend of April, we ended up moving it to June because hotels were saying they weren't going to let people stay at the hotel because of the thing. And I didn't want to, like a couple of probably 3 or 4 weeks in advance with that going on, I was like, you know what, guys? I don't want people flying here who were planning to stay at a hotel, not able to stay at a hotel, and like, WTF, Nicole, right? So we moved it to June. It's the only time I've moved my spring event. And some people, as a result, could not go because they had taken that week off, and they ended up coming in 2021. But the folks who did come, we had a much quieter spring workshop than we usually do. And I remember commenting like, it's so quiet. But at that workshop, we turned a corner. And one of the corners we turned is we realized we make our future. And no matter what they tell us to do, we're still here doing this event. We're still here making our own choices. We're still here focusing on making a better life. And I did a podcast, and I explained the big lesson from the word grow was, if I'm going to grow, it's up to me to do it. There's no fairy godmother that's going to come down and give me like glass slippers and all of a sudden my life turns around. I've got to do the work. Despite what's going on in the world around me, even if everything's shut down, the only way I grow is grow. And as a result of that podcast, John Willis reached out to me and ordered coffee branded for special operations equipment, which I did. Caught my roaster on fire, did the Kickstarter, and Holler Roast grew. So all of those things sound awful, right? But yet, here's what you're hearing in that. Amid all of that negative stuff going on, I grew. Holler Roast grew. It was also a big lesson. I learned a lot about how important community is because Jack Spirko invited me on to Unloose the Goose. I didn't have time to do another podcast. I joined anyway because I was like, here's an opportunity. It will help me grow. Part of why my Kickstarter was so successful was John Willis. Another part was everybody on the Unloose the Goose crew got behind me and talked about it and shared it with their networks, right? I realized how important community was to grow, especially if you're choosing to grow despite what's going on in the world. And here we are again in a year where it feels like inflation is out of control. Interest rates are up. It's impossible to buy your first home, and salaries don't appear to be keeping up with expenses. It's the worst time to start a business, right? Well, maybe it's the best time. Maybe if you start a business right now, you'll be able to grow despite anything, because it's easy to start a business when times are good and everybody has disposable money. Now you've really got to make the case for why your product is the thing, why what you do is superior to something else, why they want to invest their hard-earned dollar into what you're doing. It's actually the best time. There's a lot of opportunity right now, as long as you see it. That was my lesson from the word grow. And then after that year, I chose balance. And you guys can tell how balanced I am by the way my voice sounds right now. Anyway, that's a joke. I'm just going to do less. That's for you, Thad. Just went year after year, word after word. And for 2023, the word I chose was breakthrough. And I started by doing a quick bathroom remodel in the week I usually take off between Christmas and New Year, which I will do again this year. That's the week I start setting myself up for the next year and get some downtime and all of that. And I so wanted to redo my bathroom because it was nasty. It was just time to redo it. And I had all the plans and I went in with best case scenario mindset and did not get the best case scenario. And Ryan Steva, Carrie Brown from Strong Roots Resources, who's here in the notes, Tactical. I think Ken Ash was out here. Like a lot of people worked on my bathroom. So Ken Ash consulted because we found 2x4 joists. 2x4 joists have become a theme of my year. And we got it all put back together. It ended up it was one of those things where you're like, this is my scope. And then it was like, this is what needs to be fixed. So like, it's a narrow scope. It's about the size of a softball. But what I ended up needing to fix was the size of a beach ball. And that has happened on most projects in my house since buying this house 17 years ago. So we got done, but the bathroom was not finished for weeks and weeks, months. It was more than a month before it got to the point where I could use it again. Even now, I'm looking at my bathroom from my studio and I see that the trim on the wall is not done. We're going to fix that. But the good news is I was able to get it done right for the first time, because every other time in my life this has happened to me, I have ended up with not enough money to finish the job. And so I decided to also redo the kitchen counters before the spring workshop and get that going. Just like a quick remodel again. Take the floor out, like, because it was not level. Figure out why it's not level, because that'll be easy. It'll be a simple fix. No problem. And then take the cabinets out, put in new Formica or put in wood countertops. I was going to have Jason Smith cut me some thick wood countertops, which I'm still going to do. And then move the sink, like change fix the drain problem I've always had. No problem. It'll take us 3 weeks. And then got into the kitchen, and pretty much anytime you get into a room where there's water, you find things. And I found things like we reframed an exterior wall. We had to dig to get the joist. We thought we could have the same joists in there. And guess what? They were 2x4s. Now, I don't know if you know that much about joists. You don't need to know much about joists other than every contractor ever who sees a picture of my home when we're ripping floors out freaks out because my joists are 2x4s. And I mean, nobody fell through the floor. In the 40 years house has existed, nobody fell through the floor. Did explain why the floor wasn't level, though, and then there's not enough clearance to put anything but 2x4s back in unless you raise the level of the floor. And so luckily I'd hired Ken Ash to do that part where he was just replacing the subfloor, maybe replacing a few joists. He replaced all the joists. He tried to jack up one wall that wouldn't jack up ever. And finally we just left that particular wall as it was. And he came up with the solution that we could dig in a few places, and also the floor would raise about an inch, and put 2x6s in, which people still don't approve of, but it's better than 2x4s. And it's a very stable, very level floor. Because the other thing is my ceiling's low. So it's like you can only lose so much. And then like tall people, and there is a tall person in my life here, are going to have like some issues with the ceilings in their head. Now, 1 inch didn't do it, but thicker floors would have. So we put extra bracing under it, got that all done. And as a result of that, we ripped out my little bathroom in the mudroom because its joists needed to be replaced too. And I had just redone that bathroom 2 years ago. So I'm doing a redo. And then I was like, well, heck. And this is where mindset change really came to me. Everything's breaking. I'm getting the break and breakthrough, right? I decided I'm just going to take a long-term view of how to fix this stuff, and the money I put aside to have custom cabinets made, I'm going to throw into fixing the core foundational underlying problem, because long-term my life will be better if I don't ever have to get into this floor again. So that was my fun. That was my deal. By the way, I use a cloud-based system for my show notes, and I'm going to stop because every so often my cloud-based thing decides this moment is the moment I want to log you out, rather than saying, hey, do you want to log out right now so you can re-enter your password so we can make sure you're you? Just in case somebody stole your computer and is pretending to be you to read this list of bullet points. And I'd just like to be able to say just once, no, wait an hour. But no, I just got logged out of my notes, and that kind of sucks for me. But so far I can still see them. I'm now basically afraid to move on my computer, though, because I'm going to lose my notes. And then you guys are going to watch me have to go find my password, which I do not have memorized, and then get logged back in and then get back to my notes. So, like, pull for me on this one, guys. Pull for me. Also, I'm going to fire this vendor, but that's okay. I just realized that right now while I was recording. Anyways, the reason I chose Breakthrough is that our community, my podcast, and my financial future has been poor. Like, I am not unsuccessful. I have a decent income. I am not millionaire like scope. So a lot of people will have me on the show to talk about how to build a successful business. And I'm sitting there going, well, I mean, if you define success as in I'm not going into debt, I'm covering costs, I am building momentum, I have good customers, and I have enough income for me to not die, like, that's successful. But I'm not that person pulling down $2 million a year in gross revenue. That's not me. I hang out with people like that, and I'll be on shows with them, and they're saying what they do, and I'm always like sitting there going, I'm at a different place in my business than you are. And some of them grew very quickly to there. I've been on a slow growth the whole time that this has happened. And that slow growth has been fine for me. I've never had the point where I just 10x'd or 20x'd overnight. It's always been like with Hollow Roast Coffee, the first few years I doubled every year, but like when you're doubling $5,000 in revenue to $10,000, it's not a long stretch. When you're doubling 50,000 to 100 or 100 to 200, that's a much bigger push, right? So that rate of growth has fallen to about 20% year over year this year. And that's because as it gets bigger, it grows slower percentage wise, unless I change what I do. And I thought, it is time for a breakthrough in the network and in all of the things that I'm doing. And in order to do that, I need to think about breakthrough every single day. That's why I chose the word breakthrough. And by summertime, so I've had a lot of people invite me to come speak this year. People want me to speak. I'm a great presenter. I'm a good keynoter. I will make your audience happy, right? What I realized is I needed to set better boundaries around things because I'm also a people pleaser. I like to help. And if I don't have boundaries, I don't get me time. And I don't get enough time to do the foundational things that need to be in place to be able to break through on the communication side, on the podcast side, on the coffee side. The word foundational is important in this. Because the interesting thing about that is simultaneously in my home, foundational problems have to be fixed in order for my home to thrive. And I'm the kind of person that needs a thriving home environment to feel balanced. And I have not had a thriving home environment for years because of foundational problems, and I don't feel balanced in my own home. So it's funny how the physical universe and the more like intangible part of my life both have the foundational issues that need to be fixed. And 5 years ago, if I had been, hit with, I need to replace my floor joists, I might have covered it all back up and just gone on with life and ignored it because I didn't have the money and I didn't see a way I could get the money. That mindset's gone. When I raised money for my first commercial roaster, I thought it was a stretch to pre-sell $5,000 worth of coffee so that I could buy a $3,500 roaster, bootstrap and deploy it by hook and crook, and start shipping orders that were roasted 2 pounds at a time instead of half a pound at a time. And then my next Kickstarter was $30,000 where I pre-sold coffee. I didn't think there would ever be a time in my life. I'm sorry about the background noise if you're getting the construction noise. I didn't think there'd ever be a time in my life where I could just see that it was a $20,000 increase in equipment for me to make my business better and be like, yeah, I can do that. And now, 5 years later, I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Because that insurmountable number is no longer insurmountable. I've realized that when you prioritize the long term and when you prioritize things you need to do. How loud is that, guys? Because if it's super loud, I'm going to make some changes because it seems to be going on for a very long time. Just put it in the comments. I realized that I can do it. And even if I come up against something that is $100 to get to the next level, $100,000 to get to the next level, I can do that too. So that's a mindset change. Oh, good. Thanks, Pack Rat. Okay, not too. I have one door closed, but I have a heater going because there's no wood stove in my home, and I'm using electricity to heat right now during this remodel. So I just needed to. I just needed to have some heat in here because it was freezing in my house. I'm living in a camper, by the way. We'll talk about that too. I guess Operation Independence. I was supposed to tell you about my glamping site, and I forgot to do that. We'll do that at the end. So boundaries were big. And the biggest thing about boundaries is this one word sentence, no. I had to learn to say no more. And saying no has not been my high point ever in my life. It's like opportunity, yes, go for it. Opportunity, yes, go for it. Somebody needs help, yes, go for it. I want to start a new project, yes, go for it. Right? Well, by July of this year, I had said yes to a lot of. I was like, I can do one speaking gig a month, and then there was one person who I really liked, who really, really, really wanted me to speak, and I put 2 in 1 month, and then we enter into this fall. And so by July, I was looking at my schedule, going, I see what I did there. That was dumb. I'm going to start saying no to speaking gigs because I need to actually be in my home to be able to give you the content. You know, like to make the cheese and show you the cheese I make, I got to be home to make the cheese. Right? Right. So no became a core of the word breakthrough. But my lessons weren't done yet. It was also decide. And I did an episode on decide. If you do not decide what to do when somebody comes to you with something, or when there are like, do I take this new job opportunity, or do I stay where I'm at, or do I go out on my own and start my own thing? Those are my 3 choices, hypothetical choices. If you do not decide in that situation, then you realize that the decision has been made for you. And often the decision that's made for you is not what you wanted. Not what you wanted. And when I realized that, I started making big decisions much faster. So I make huge decisions really fast now. Really fast. And there was another side of that. The small decisions you make every single day for yourself and your family and your life are way more important than that big hypothetical scenario I gave you, where do I start on my own? Do I take a new job, or do I stay at my job? Likewise, do I move to Tennessee or Texas, or do I stay here in New Hampshire? Another big, seems like a big decision, right? And hey, Alabama says, I'm now living by myself. I'm not babysitting any more grown-ass adults. Yep, that's good. The big decisions matter less when you have a clear direction, because you should be able to decide rather quickly on those things than every single day doing things like deciding, make time for a walk with your dogs. Make sure you get your most important things done for the day, which are on this piece of paper for me right now. Make sure you follow through on that promise you made. Make sure you follow through on that promise to yourself you made. Eat the right kinds of food so that you're healthy. I just spent the last 7 days pretty much in Texas at Jack Spirko's, where there was opportunity to drink a lot of alcohol. And most of the time I was there, I was very careful with that. I made sure I went to bed relatively early so that I got plenty of sleep. I I ate decent food, although I did not eat on keto plan. I made sure that the things that you guys got 2 podcasts last week, all of those are small daily decisions. So decide is important. Decide quickly on the big things. And remember that the most important decisions you ever make are all the small ones. It's the taking the 5 minutes with your kids when they transition from being out with their friends and come home. If you're, if it's not 2 a.m. and you're asleep, but you know what I mean? Like they come home at 3 p.m, that 5-minute period of time is when your child, as part of the transition, will open up the most and talk to you. That's when you find out the information you need to know. So that's a small decision to make, is to make that 5 minutes worth of time. The reason this show started late is because my sister called me 4 minutes before I was supposed to go live. And I walked outside and talked to her for 10 minutes because she was transitioning from work to home. She was telling me important information about what's going on out there, and she needed to talk. And she's important to me. So I started the live stream late. Still got the live stream. It was a small decision, and it was a small amount of time, and it was a small thing, and it was much more important than me deciding to put more time into Hollow Roast Coffee than I have been, for example, which is a big decision. The other thing is the things that you make time for will happen. And the things you don't make time for will not happen. And so when you're talking about, can I make time to produce a Hey Baby video? Or can I make time to document this process? Or can I make time to create my online course? If you decide it's a priority, you will figure out how to do it. And what you have to start saying to yourself, rather than I don't have time to do that, is how do I do that? How can I make time to do that? Here's where I'm at right now with this one. Very big things to think about right now. Christmas roasting season is upon us for Hollow Roast Coffee. So between now and Christmas, it's busy now. It'll be busier next week. It'll be super busy Thanksgiving week. And then it will be like sprint until December 21st, probably around there. And that means because I roast twice a week and ship coffee, I'm going to need to roast more than twice a week, which means I need to look at my schedule and decide how am I making time to roast more. Because I got to get the orders out, or what other ways can I get that done? I have no doubt I can get it done. I will get it done. I always get it done. And it's because I know it's important to make time for that. What that means is I won't make time for some other things for now. It's a 2-month period of my life. It's the most important 2 months for Hollow Roast Coffee right now. Every year, November and December, super important for the coffee business. So I decide if I meet my deadlines for my customers. And it's important to my customers when they send somebody a gift that the gift arrive by Christmas, if at all possible. So me putting off sending coffee for a week right around December 25th is a bad idea. Now, I will then close the business for a week between December 23rd and December 28th, or the first of the year. We're not shipping anything except for subscription orders then. And I'll probably ship those subscription orders early and hope that the people pay for them, just so it's done, because I don't want to miss it. And I'll be flying home to California again at the end of December to see family. So things that you make time for will happen. And if you don't make time for the things that are important, guess whose fault it is? It's your fault when you don't make time for the things that are important to you. And it's very easy to get distracted by the urgent things. But when you snap back to what's important to you, it's amazing how much better your life is. So the latest lessons, Porterhouse, hi. Jen, hi. Jose and Carrot Lee, hi. Sorry, a bunch of people joined the live stream, and it was kind of cool. It's like, oh, the fun people are here. Not that the people who were already here aren't fun. You guys are fun too. There was like an influx. I wonder if that means Jack Spirko just stopped recording his podcast. Anyway, latest lessons learned are this. Family relationships are very important to me. I'm going to say that a second time. Family and relationships are very important to me. And as part of my entrepreneurial journey, a lot of the advice I've been getting is work harder, blah, blah, blah. And I tend towards workaholism, and don't let your drama impact other people around you. And that's not wrong for building a business. But when my family is hurting and when somebody dies in my family or is sick or has a baby or has a wedding, that's important to me too. And if you go back to thinking, hey, what do I want to make time for? I want to make time for those times. And I really got that lesson this year because there were a lot of those times to make time for this time. In fact, I came down to the wire in October I had a wedding to go to and a really sick stepfather. And I almost didn't go to the wedding to go see my stepfather. And then I was like, he would want me to celebrate the life of this person getting married, right? Like, life is more important than being sick. And so I decided to go to the wedding and then go see my stepfather, so that I did both, because I need to do less. But it's important to me. And there are folks who I know who have a different boundary where it is for them. For them, the family comes to them. They don't go to the family. I go to the family. That is a decision I've made of something I want to make time for that's important to me. So I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to sacrifice that for my success. Siloing is very important. If you want to go watch a look on my face that you will understand once I tell you what really happened, go back. I think, who were we interviewing? I don't know. It was Tuesday before Self-Reliance Festival. It was not Risky Krisky. Who was on that Tuesday? I don't remember. It was somebody good too. Anyway, Tuesday before Self-Reliance Festival, like October 13th, or not 13th, 12th, 11th. October 10th? 13th was Friday, Thursday, Wednesday. So October 9th. That live stream, if you watch it, we're talking, I'm asking questions, and you'll see a look on my face, and then you'll see me start typing because I type in the comments, right? And then you will see a cup of coffee come in and get handed to me, and you will see me take a drink. And you will see me swallow, and then you will see me go on with the live stream. What had happened is I got news that my cousin, who I grew up with, who is close to my age, died. The fact that I even got that message in the middle of a live stream was a little weird, but it just happened because I was like trying to pull up a screen to show for the person who was doing the live stream. And then I saw that other message and I was like, so in order to get through that live stream successfully, I did have to silo. So yes, my family's important to me. Yes, delivering on my promises is also important to me. And that live stream was one of my promises. So finished the live stream. And then I took the rest of the day off. I will admit, I was actually getting ready to go out of town to go to Self-Reliance Festival because I got there Wednesday. And I was just like, I'm just going to like go on a walk for a minute and then I didn't talk about or think about that topic through Self-Reliance Festival. And then I did deal with it emotionally. So siloing sometimes is important too. And then this last one is really important. You must slow down to go further. You must slow down to go further. And what I mean by that is, in fact, do less, as my friend Thad told me about 9,000 times. And as I look at my year of breakthrough, what's been important in my home is to fix the foundational problems. What's been important in my business is to fix foundational problems, in particular, marketing schedules, clarity of message, clarity of priority, and getting things done in a way that I still remain balanced and healthy. Well, the other thing I realized is that if I continue to scatter on too many things at one time, I don't get enough time on any one thing to really push it where it needs to go. So, hi, Erica. What I need to do is put more time in fewer things rather than do more things. Or as Thad would say, do less. And that's a little counter to my nature because I have a tendency to scatter out and really, think about all the new ideas I have. Like, I see a lot of opportunity out there, but I know I need to do that. And when I look at what makes me the best money, it is in fact Hollow Roast coffee. So I'm putting more into the coffee going into 2024. And what's next means a slower, steadier show schedule. I was doing 5 shows a week at one point this year. I'm not doing that anymore. We're gonna probably keep it to 3, sometimes 4, maybe sometimes 2, but a slower, steadier schedule. I'm changing to where things drop at in general the same time on the same day of the week, which I haven't done for a while because it's been really scattered. This means working ahead, which means setting the foundation for that. And then the My 3 Things book is written. It's in editing now. And what I would have done in the past was immediately get that to market and out to y'all, because you guys have been screaming for my 3 Things book for years now. It's taken me years to write this. That's not what I'm doing. I'm slowing down on that. I am putting together a rollout plan with supportive webinars and other things so that people know the book is coming and then can buy it, but also so that it is rolled out in a more methodical way with clarity of focus so people know what they're getting. So I'm actually pulling back to do that better, to invest more time in doing that better. And I will say the thing that taught me that lesson most starkly this year was the Homestead Starter Pack 7 webinar series, which was good. And I should have, instead of doing one a week for 7 weeks, I should have done one every other week or one every 3 weeks and given people a chance. People need time in between things too. By the 7th one, I was dying from running that pace while also traveling, even though I had other instructors teaching. And so I realized that was a good series. It would have been better had I slowed down and rolled those out, slowed the roll. Even though I had all the content made before I went in, slow the roll and get that done. I think the best webinar out of all of those that I did was the cheese webinar. Like, people enjoyed that one so much. And I'm probably going to go back and redo some of those webinars to bring in more of the sort of the cheese webinar approach. But that's what's next for me. And also, I do plan to get a pool. But last week, I saw the exact endless pool I want, 2021 year in Knoxville, $15,000. It sold around $13,500. Delivered, just have to pay a guy to set it up for me, and it'd be about $6,000 to set it up. So yes, I'm talking lots of money for this pool. And I thought long and hard overnight. What do I do? And again, long-term thinking, keeping my foundation in place. This is what I've learned from Breakthrough. I made the decision not to buy the pool, even though it was the one, because 2 other times this year, in the last 6 months, I have seen the one, which means about 3 times every 6 months, every 2 months, the right pool comes up used at a price I'm willing to pay or that's reasonable for that pool. A. B. I haven't tested other swim spas, and I'm not sure that Endless Pool brand is the one I want to go with, because I've heard so many complaints from people about getting them serviced, getting parts for it, that after you buy the pool, the customer support at Endless Pools isn't very good. And since I've seen so many negative inputs on that, I want to try out some of the other brands that maybe have a better system for installation and for customer support. Because if you're going to spend that much money on a pool, you don't want people not giving you customer support. That's a terrible thing. So I also knew that we were getting into the project that's going on where I finished living room joists, and now I can finally have a floor instead of just painted subfloor again in my home, and get that second bathroom done and paint my walls and re-drywall everything and have electric circuits that work and like all of the things that we're doing here. And I know from past experience in this home that every time I get into what seems like a simple project, things spiral out of control. And so spending $15,000 on a pool at that hot minute seemed like a really bad idea, because who knows if I need that $15,000 right out there. Well, here's the thing that has also changed since the year of Breakthrough. And this is something I didn't realize until this project went so well. This project went great. Like, materials happened. when they needed to happen. It was the right materials, the right people showed up at the right time to do the work that needed to happen. And when we got into the floor, nothing unexpected was found. Is that because this is easier as a project than other projects? No. That's because I finally took time to think about what my worst case scenario was going into that project, what was most likely to happen based on all of the other times we've done projects here, and come up with a plan for what was likely to happen and a backup plan for what could happen if things went wrong. And I also got a glamper, a vintage camper from 1972 to live in, so I don't have to get here getting colds from the air quality, because the air quality is never great when you're doing construction, and it's particularly bad when you're opened up to what Alyssa refers to as my underhouse. She's like, it's not a crawl space, it's not a basement, it's just your underhouse. So it's really, I mean, that's all sealed up again, so I don't have exposure to that. But I realized that if I'm going to be healthy for me, if I'm going to be healthy for the LFTN community, I needed to not be breathing this all the time. So I'm living in a camper now until that's done. And then the long-term thinking, guys, from Breakthrough, the camper is being set up on my property as a glamping site that will be for rent. And then I can use the camper when I'm speaking places where a camper living situation is possible. And so that's a big breakthrough moment for me, where I was like, this is how I can get that all done and not get sick, and then turn it into a business opportunity. So you can kind of hear by as I explain these things, how my mindset has changed after a year of Breakthrough. And that's the power of the word of the year, is it helps you focus in on something and realize what it takes to do the thing. So now I've got 6 more weeks before the end of the year. Well, my end of the year, to finish with the word breakthrough. And then we're on to a whole nother thing for next year. So after hearing this, guys, what are you thinking will be your word of the year? Are you kind of intrigued? Like, maybe I need to change something. Maybe there's a word I can focus on that'll help me. I think it's a great way to do it. And this year, I really thought that breakthrough was going to be my word next year too. But I am now realizing, after having some conversations with my friend Thad at Jack Spirko's, and realizing that not only is slower and steadier an important approach, and putting more time on fewer things, but doing less is what is important foundationally to break through. It's an interesting thing, because you think just work harder and you'll break through. Doing more of less, very important. With that, if you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at Hollow Roast and maybe drink it in a Calamity-ware mug. 2, consider becoming a member. Just head over to Living Free in Tennessee to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.